enemy had infiltrated their radio frequencies. All communication was down. The panicked SEALs didn't know what to do, until the silent communications girl stepped up to the microphone, and the first words that came out of her mouth shocked everyone. Perfect Russian. The early morning hours at Fort Liberty's Communications Center began with their usual activity. The constant hum of electronic devices, static sounds from various frequencies, and continuously blinking LED lights showed the vital importance of this place. In the midst of this complex technological arrangement, Rachel Torres quietly sat at her workstation. 30 years old, medium height, with dark brown hair always neatly arranged in a bun, Rachel had lived this routine for the past 4 years. Same time every morning, same silence. She put on her headset, checked her monitors, and began managing daily communication traffic. She never spoke. She only made necessary technical adjustments, tuned frequencies, and managed communication traffic. There was a striking efficiency in Rachel's work style. She precisely adjusted every frequency change, optimized signal quality, minimized noise ratio. Her fingers' movement over the keyboard was so fast and precise that she seemed like she had been doing this job for years. But of course, most people didn't notice this. The other operators in the communication center were usually men, and they didn't take Rachel very seriously. To them, she was just the silent girl. Since she never spoke, some thought she was mute. "Morning, Ghost," said Sergeant Mike Rodriguez as he passed by Rachel. Rodriguez was one of the center's most experienced operators, with 10 years of experience. Still playing the silent game. Rachel nodded slightly but said nothing. This situation amused Rodriguez. "I swear she's like a robot," he said to another operator, Corporal James Wilson. 4 years here, never heard her say more than yes or no. Wilson laughed. "Maybe she can't handle real communication. Just good with the technical stuff." Rachel heard these conversations but didn't react. Her eyes on her screens, her ears on frequencies, her fingers on the keyboard. Always alert, always listening. But nobody was aware of this. At 10 o'clock, there was a daily briefing. Communications Officer Captain Thompson gathered all operators. Rachel also entered the meeting room with the others, sitting in the back row as always. "Today, we are implementing new encryption protocols," Captain Thompson explained. "Russian activity has increased in our operational zones. We need to be extra vigilant about frequency security." Nobody noticed Rachel's fingers trembling slightly on the table. Russian activity. These words caused different resonances in her mind. "Rodriguez, you'll handle primary frequencies. Wilson, you're on backup. Torres," Thompson looked at Rachel, "you continue with routine traffic monitoring." Routine traffic monitoring. This was always her assigned task. Nobody gave her actual operations, just routine work. In the afternoon, Rachel was working quietly at her station as always. Around her, male operators were constantly talking, joking, sharing operational details. Rachel was like she wasn't there, like an invisible presence. "Did you hear about the new intel?" Rodriguez whispered to Wilson. "Apparently, Russians are using new frequency hopping techniques. Makes it almost impossible to track." "Good thing we have our tech guy," Wilson said sarcastically, pointing to Rachel. "Maybe she can tune into their favorite music stations." Laughter rose. Rachel didn't react at all, but the speed of her fingers on the keyboard increased slightly. On her screens, constantly changing data, frequency analyses, signal quality reports were flowing. When the evening shift began, the center took on a quieter atmosphere. Night shifts usually had fewer personnel. Rachel preferred these hours. Less attention, less conversation, more concentration opportunity. At 11 o'clock at night, Rachel caught an unusual signal while doing routine frequency scanning. Very faint, almost mixed with static noise, but definitely meaningful to her trained ears. Encrypted communication. Professional grade. Rachel's finger movement over the keypad stopped. Alert mode activated. She had heard this signal before. It seemed very familiar. Russian military encryption protocols. A few minutes later, the signal became clearer. Rachel carefully isolated the frequency and began signal analysis. This was definitely hostile communication, and they were talking about the base's operational frequencies. Rachel quickly began analyzing the encryption pattern. Her hands worked like machine guns over the keyboard. The code structure seemed familiar. This was GRU encryption methodology, Russian military intelligence. 10 minutes later, Rachel realized the terrible truth. The enemy wasn't just listening to them. They had infiltrated their communication network. They were monitoring all operational traffic, and they were planning a coordinated attack before dawn. Rachel should immediately press the alert button, but something stopped her. If she gave an alarm, according to standard protocol, all communications would be shut down. This would alert the enemy. Instead, she needed to conduct a counterintelligence operation. Rachel took a deep breath. 4 years of silence would end. She turned on the microphone and switched to emergency frequency. "Command Center, this is Communications Station 7, she said in perfect, accentless English. "We have hostile infiltration of primary communication networks." The duty officer at the center was shocked. "Station 7? Torres, is that you?" "Affirmative. Russian GRU operatives have compromised our encryption. They're planning coordinated assault at 0400 hours. Meanwhile, other operators began hearing alarm sounds. Rodriguez and Wilson came running to Rachel's station. "What's happening?" Rodriguez asked. "Torres, what are you doing?" Rachel didn't even look at them. She had initiated counterintelligence protocol. The speed of her fingers had now reached superhuman level. She was simultaneously monitoring 6 different frequencies, analyzing enemy communication patterns, implementing countermeasures. "Torres!" Wilson shouted. "What the hell is going on?" This time, Rachel turned to them, but the expression on her face was no longer the familiar Rachel. Professional, focused, deadly serious. "Russian operatives," she said in a calm but definite tone, "have been monitoring our communications for approximately 72 hours. They know our patrol schedules, guard rotations, and operational frequencies." "How do you know this?" Rodriguez asked in shock. Rachel returned to her microphone and began speaking in a completely different tone. Perfect Russian. «Внимание, неизвестная станция. Мы знаем о вашем присутствии. Немедленно прекратите передачу, или мы примем контрмеры. Attention, unknown station. We know about your presence. Cease transmission immediately, or we will take countermeasures." Rodriguez and Wilson were completely frozen. Rachel hadn't spoken for 4 years. Now she was speaking fluent Russian. Panic-filled voices began coming from the Russian frequency. Rachel smiled, for the first time in 4 years. «Мы засекли ваши позиции. У вас есть 5 минут для эвакуации». «We have detected your positions. You have 5 minutes for evacuation." The enemy communication network suddenly went silent. Rachel's counterintelligence bluff had been successful. Captain Thompson came running to the communication center with alarm sounds. "What's the situation?" "Russian infiltration neutralized," Rachel reported, now in completely normal English. Hostile communication terminated. Base security restored. Thompson looked at Rachel in disbelief. Torres, you handled this? Affirmative, sir. Rodriguez stepped forward. Captain, she just spoke perfect Russian, and she's been silent for 4 years. Thompson began examining Rachel more closely. Torres, your background check showed no language skills. Rachel stopped. The 4-year cover story was ending. My background check was incomplete, sir. Incomplete how? I'm not Rachel Torres, she said calmly. I'm Agent Rachel Volkov, NSA, Signal Intelligence Division, Deep Cover Assignment. Complete silence dominated the communications center. Thompson, Rodriguez, Wilson, all were looking at Rachel in shock. Agent Volkov, Thompson slowly repeated. NSA? Affirmative. 4 years, deep cover to monitor potential communication security breaches. Tonight's infiltration confirmed our intelligence about Russian capabilities. Rodriguez still couldn't process it. You've been pretending to be mute for 4 years. Not mute, undercover. The best cover is complete invisibility. Wilson stepped forward. So you understood everything we said? All our jokes, every word, Rachel confirmed. That was part of the mission. Monitor internal security, identify potential vulnerabilities, assess personnel reliability. Thompson switched to professional mode. Agent Volkov, what's the current threat status? Rachel turned to her screens. Russian team has withdrawn. They lost communication security and aborted operation, but they'll be back with different methods. Recommendations? Complete communication protocol overhaul, new encryption keys, enhanced signal security. And, Rachel stopped, continued monitoring of hostile activities. By you? Rachel thought. 4 years of silence had ended. Cover blown. Mission parameters would change. If command approves, yes, sir. Captain Thompson nodded. I'll contact NSA immediately for confirmation and new protocols. In the following hours, base leadership verified Rachel's real identity. NSA confirmation came. Agent Rachel Volkov, Signal Intelligence Specialist. 12 years service, multiple classified operations. Rodriguez and Wilson still couldn't get out of shock. 12 years? Rodriguez asked. How old are you? Classified, Rachel replied with a slight smile. All those times we called you robot. Wilson was ashamed. Perfect cover maintenance, Rachel assured him. You performed exactly as expected. Expected? Deep cover operations require authentic environment. Your genuine dismissal of my capabilities provided optimal camouflage. Thompson returned to official briefing. Agent Volkov, moving forward. What's your operational status? Rachel looked at the communication console. 4 years of silent position versus active intelligence operations. Request permission to maintain current position with enhanced authority, she said. This location provides optimal signal intelligence gathering capabilities. Granted, but no more silence. We need your expertise fully operational. Rachel nodded. Understood, sir. The next morning, everything changed. Rachel arrived at her normal time, but she was no longer invisible. Personnel respectfully greeted her. Good morning, Agent Volkov. Rodriguez approached, nervous but respectful. Agent Volkov, about yesterday, and all the previous days. Rachel looked at him directly. Mike, you treated me exactly as my cover required. Professional invisibility achieved mission objectives. But we were jerks. You were authentic. That authenticity protected both the base and the mission. Wilson joined the conversation. Rachel, can I ask something? Proceed. 4 years of silence, wasn't it frustrating? Having all that knowledge and not being able to use it. Rachel considered this. Every mission requires sacrifice. My sacrifice was social interaction, but the intelligence gathered was invaluable. What kind of intelligence? Personnel security profiles, communication vulnerabilities, potential infiltration methods, behavioral patterns. Rachel paused. Comprehensive base security assessment. Thompson approached with morning briefing materials. Agent Volkov, we've received new intelligence about Russian signal capabilities. Your assessment? Rachel reviewed the documents quickly. They're more sophisticated than these reports indicate. Last night's infiltration was preliminary reconnaissance. Meaning? They'll return with enhanced methods. We need proactive countermeasures. Rodriguez listened intently. What do you recommend? Rachel turned to the communication array. Complete spectrum monitoring, multi-language intercept capabilities, and real-time threat analysis. Can you handle that scope? Rachel smiled with slight confidence. That's what I was trained for. Over the following weeks, Rachel transformed communication center operations. Her language skills covered Russian, Mandarin, Arabic, Farsi, Korean, and others. Signal analysis capabilities expanded dramatically. Threat detection improved by 400%. Personnel now consulted her on communication security, signal analysis, and threat assessment. But she maintained her workstation, her routine, her focus. One morning, Rodriguez approached. Rachel, any security concerns today? Rachel checked her multiple monitors, analyzed current signal traffic, and smiled. All frequencies secure. No hostile activity detected. Thank you, Agent Volkov. You're welcome, Mike, she replied. And for the first time in 4 years, she truly meant it. Because sometimes the greatest strength isn't silence. Sometimes it's knowing when to break it. Months later, Rachel had become the communication center's most valuable asset. Her multi-language capabilities and signal analysis expertise had prevented 3 more infiltration attempts. The quiet woman who had once been invisible was now indispensable, but she still preferred her corner workstation, still arrived early, still worked with focused precision. Some things never changed. One evening, as the day shift ended, Thompson approached her station. Agent Volkov, any regrets about breaking your cover? Rachel looked at her monitors, then at the team of operators who now treated her with genuine respect and professional admiration. No regrets, Captain, she said with a quiet smile. 4 years of listening taught me that silence has its place, but so does speaking up when it matters most. She returned to her frequencies, knowing that somewhere out there, hostile signals were waiting to be detected, and she would be ready, because the best guardians are often the ones you never see coming until the moment they choose to be heard.